My name is Myra. I am 33 years old. And on Mother's Day, in front of 600 high society guests at my mother-in-law's annual charity gala, my husband slapped me across the face. It wasn't a graze. It was a full contact, open palm strike. The sound was picked up by the microphone on the podium and echoed through 12 ceiling-mounted speakers. Every crystal on every chandelier in that ballroom seemed to catch the dead. Suffocating silence that followed. Then Judith, my mother-in-law, stood on the stage, slowly raised her champagne glass, and smiled. A few people in the front rows actually laughed nervously. I stood there, feeling the warm copper taste of blood pooling on my split lip. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at Judith and thought exactly one thing. None of you have any idea who my mother is. 48 hours later, my husband would be standing in handcuffs in front of a county judge. Judith would permanently lose the multi-million-dollar charitable foundation she had spent 21 years building. And I would be sitting safely in my mother's kitchen in Akron, Ohio, eating stuffed cabbage rolls, finally breathing clean air. But to understand how a marriage ends in front of 600 people, you have to understand that what happened that night didn't start with a slap. It started 3 years earlier. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we tell real, raw stories about life, betrayal, and the moments that force us to take our power back. If you've ever been made to feel like you weren't good enough for someone else's family, or if you've ever had to smile through gritted teeth while being completely disrespected, this story is for you. Do me a huge favor, hit that like button to support the channel. Drop a comment with your thoughts as we go, and make sure you're subscribed. It helps us bring more of these stories to light. Now, let's get into it. I grew up in a tiny, cramped studio apartment in Akron, Ohio. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and one absolute force of nature for a mother. Her name is Elena. She immigrated to the US from Romania when she was 23. She had $400 in her pocket and a worn-out English phrase book. During the day, she worked as a court interpreter, translating the darkest parts of human nature. At night, she sat at a sticky library table, 2 bus rides away from our apartment. Studying for the bar exam, she passed on her second try when she was 31. My mother is not a warm, cookie baking kind of mom. She is pragmatic. She is steel. Growing up, she had one strict rule in our house. She'd look at me, her thick Romanian accent cutting through whatever childish drama I was having, and say, "No crying without a plan. Myra, tears are data. They just tell you something is wrong. So read the data and then fix it." I didn't fully grasp the weight of that philosophy until I was much older. I put my head down, worked hard, and graduated from Ohio State completely debt-free on a full scholarship. I got a degree in health administration and landed a fantastic job in compliance at a regional hospital system. If you don't know what compliance is, basically, it's my job to find the truth. I review financial records, I flag irregularities, and I make sure the numbers match the reality. I catch people lying for a living. I thought the hardest parts of my life were comfortably in the rearview mirror. I had my career, my own apartment, my independence. Then I met Grant. Grant was a golden boy. He came from the Kesler family, a name that held a lot of weight in our city. When we met at a hospital fundraiser, he completely disarmed me. He wasn't arrogant. He was charming, attentive, and he actually listened. He would remember tiny details I mentioned in passing and bring them up weeks later. We spent 6 months having Sunday morning coffees and late night phone calls. When he proposed on a park bench with a ring that cost more than my car, I said yes without hesitation. But the mask started slipping almost immediately. The first red flag didn't come with a shout. It came with a joke. When he slid the ring on my finger, he chuckled and said, "Mom needs to approve the ring first." Though I laughed, thinking it was a cute, self-deprecating joke about overbearing mothers. He didn't laugh back. His mother, Judith, was a woman who didn't just walk into a room, she occupied it. Her late husband, Harold, had died 21 years earlier, leaving behind a trust fund worth nearly $3 million, a lucrative building materials company, and a widow who realized that money was the ultimate leash. Judith controlled everything. She paid for Grant's life, his college, his cars, his down payments, and a $3,000 monthly supplement she wired directly into his account. His sister, Paige, got the same deal, but every dollar came with strings. If they wanted a vacation, they asked Judith. If they wanted a new roof, they asked Judith. She had built a fortress of financial control. And when I married Grant, I became an inmate. She hijacked our wedding within 72 hours of our engagement. She chose the venue, her exclusive country club. Of course, she dictated the guest list. When I asked the caterer to include my mother's traditional Romanian stuffed cabbage rolls, sarmale, as a nod to my heritage, Judith vetoed it immediately. She told the wedding planner it would confuse the guests' palates. I let it go. I compromised. I thought if I was flexible enough, accommodating enough, she would eventually accept me on my wedding day. My mother pulled me aside. She didn't give me a hug or tell me how beautiful I looked. She handed me a crisp white linen handkerchief with her name, Elena, hand-stitched in pale blue thread in the corner. She pressed it into my palm, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Wipe your tears, then make your plan." I thought she meant happy tears. I was so incredibly naive. The real wake-up call happened on our first Thanksgiving. I had spent 4 hours in my kitchen making my mother's sarmale recipe. I was so proud. I brought the glass dish into Judith's sprawling dining room and set it on the table next to the organic turkey and the artisan cranberry sauce. Judith walked over, lifted the tinfoil, stared at the cabbage rolls for a long second, and dropped the foil back down. She turned to Grant, her daughter Paige, and their extended family at the table, and said in a perfectly flat, conversational tone, "She is not one of us." She didn't whisper it. She said it like she was noting the weather. Paige smirked. Grant just stared at his plate. Absolutely silent. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I picked up my glass dish, walked out the front door, got into my car, and sat in the freezing November air for 10 minutes. I didn't cry. My mother's voice echoed in my head. Tears are data. I had the data now. This woman didn't see me as a daughter-in-law. She saw me as an infestation. When we got home that night, I opened my laptop. I created a hidden folder on my desktop and titled it Insurance. I didn't know what I was going to put in it yet. But I knew that a woman who boldly insults you at a Thanksgiving table will do far worse when she thinks no one is looking. Year 2 was when the betrayal truly deepened. We were looking to buy a house. I had saved up. Grant had his salary, and I suggested we buy a modest home with our own money. Grant looked at me like I was insane. He went crying to Judith. By Monday, Judith had picked out a 4-bedroom colonial, negotiated the mortgage, and co-signed the loan. Her name was on the deed to my marital home. I realized then that I wasn't married to a man. I was married to a son. I immediately opened a separate secret savings account. I started maxing out my 401k. I threw myself into my compliance career. Then came the group chat. One evening, Grant's phone buzzed on the coffee table while he was in the shower. 3 rapid vibrations. The screen lit up. The chat name was real Kesler's. It included Judith, Grant, Paige, and a cousin. I wasn't in it. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. I knew his passcode. It was his late father's birthday. I scrolled through months of messages. It was a digital burn book entirely about me. Paige making fun of my clothes, calling my outfits clearance rack energy. Judith mocking my mother's accent and our lack of generational wealth. But the worst part wasn't the women. The worst part was Grant. After every insult, every cruel joke about the woman he swore to protect, he replied with a blue thumbs up emoji, a laughing face. He was participating in my humiliation. I stood in my bathroom looking in the mirror. My hands were shaking, but my heart was cold. I took 47 screenshots, sent them to myself, and dropped them into the insurance folder. I put the phone back exactly where it was. By year 3, the tension in the house was suffocating. This brings us to the charity gala. Every Mother's Day, Judith hosted a massive 600 guest charity gala at her country club to benefit the local children's hospital. It was her kingdom. Politicians, lawyers, hospital board members, anyone was there. Because I was the outcast, Judith assigned me the grunt work as a volunteer. I was tasked with updating spreadsheets and stuffing envelopes. She wanted me working, but invisible. She had no idea she was giving a professional compliance auditor full access to her unencrypted financial records. While doing data entry in Judith's home office, I noticed something. I saw a physical folder detailing the year-to-date donations, $340. Ling, ling, ling. But later that week, when I walked through the country club lobby, the massive LED donation board proudly displayed $280. Ling, ling, ling. A 60,000 gap. In my line of work, we don't call that a mistake. We call that fraud. I played dumb. I asked Paige for access to the digital donor database. claiming I wanted to get a head start on writing thank you notes. Paige, arrogant and careless, emailed me the admin password. That Friday night, while Grant snored upstairs, I sat at my kitchen table and dug in. It took me 3 hours to find the rot. The missing $60, 000, had been funneled out as vendor payments to 2 companies for gala services. One was an event floral company registered to a P.O. box with no active business license. The other was an AV solutions company whose listed address was a condemned dry cleaner in a strip mall. It was a classic shell disbursement scheme. Small, consistent payments structured just under the threshold that would trigger an IRS audit. Judith was skimming from sick kids to fund her lifestyle. I exported the logs. I built a bulletproof annotated compliance report. I put it on an encrypted USB drive, mailed a physical copy to my mother in Akron, and dropped the digital file into the insurance folder. I drove to Akron that weekend. I sat at my mother's kitchen table and told her everything. The group chat, the house deed, the fraud. I talked for 40 minutes straight. Elena just sipped her black coffee. When I finally stopped, she looked at me and asked one question. What do you want? Myra, I want to leave. I told her, but I want to leave standing up. She nodded. Then you will, but you cannot do it quietly. You need them to show exactly who they are in front of people who cannot unsee it. The night before the gala, I couldn't sleep. I was in the guest room at 1:00 a.m. I went into Grant's home office to find a phone charger. When I crouched under his desk, I bumped into his bottom drawer. It was cracked open. Inside, under a stack of old tax returns, was a yellowed envelope. It said for Grant, to be opened when you marry. It was Harold Kesler's handwriting, Grant's dead father. I opened it. It was a 2-page letter written 6 months before Harold's fatal heart attack. He wrote about Judith. He wrote about how her need for control was a sickness. And then at the bottom of the second page were the words that broke my heart. Your mother is a strong woman, but strength is not the same as kindness. If your wife ever tells you she is hurting, believe her. Do not make the mistake I made. Harold knew. He knew exactly who he was married to, and he was too much of a coward to stop her. Now, 21 years later, his son was making the exact same choice. I took photos of the letter and put it back. The night of the gala arrived. I was assigned to work the door, wearing a cheap, generic name tag with only my first name on it. No Kesler. For 90 minutes, I stood in flats, greeting mayors, senators, and local elites. Inside, Grant was sitting at table 1, the center of the room, already 2 drinks deep. He hadn't spoken to me all day. I was seated at table 47, hidden behind a concrete pillar near the kitchen doors. I was sitting with strangers, a lovely retired teacher named Mrs. Aldridge, and a local dentist. At 8:15 p.m., Judith took the stage. The spotlight hit her diamonds. The room of 600 people went dead silent. She started her speech beautifully, talking about sacrifice, about the love of a mother. The crowd applauded. Then her tone shifted. The air in the room went cold, but not everyone understands sacrifice. Judith said into the mic, her voice dripping with venom. Some women marry into our families and bring foreign customs. They expect us to adapt to their lack of grace. Nervous laughter rippled through the front tables. Judith looked past the chandeliers, past the VIP tables, and locked eyes with me at table 47. I raised my son to value tradition, to value loyalty. A real mother raises her children with American values, not in a cramped studio apartment, working as a translator. She was attacking my mother. On Mother's Day, in front of the entire city, I looked at table 1. Grant was nodding. He was actually nodding along with her. Mrs. Aldridge, the retired teacher sitting next to me, reached out and put her hand on my arm. "Are you okay?" "Honey," she whispered. I stood up. 600 pairs of eyes snapped to the back of the room. I walked away from the pillar, stepping onto the polished ballroom floor. It took me a full minute to walk the 300 feet to the front of the room. The silence was so heavy you could feel it in your chest. I didn't get on the stage. I stopped right below the podium, looked up at Judith, and spoke in a clear, carrying voice. "Judith, my mother worked 3 jobs to put herself through law school. She didn't need a trust fund or a fraudulent charity gala to prove she was a good mother. She just needed to show up every single day. And she did." Judith's face flushed. The mask instantly shattered. She dramatically grabbed her chest, forcing fake tears into her eyes, and looked at the crowd. Do you see how she attacks me at my own event? That was the trigger. Grant stood up from table 1. He was drunk, embarrassed, and furious. He stormed over to me, grabbed my shoulder, and yelled, "Apologize to my mother right now." I looked at my husband, the man who had promised to love and protect me. "No." I said, Grant's right hand came across the left side of my face. Crack. The microphone caught it perfectly. The sound whipped through the room. My head snapped to the side. 3 seconds of absolute, horrifying silence. Then, Paige covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Judith smirked. Out of 600 adults, judges, doctors, philanthropists, not one person stood up. Not one person shouted, except for Mrs. Aldridge at table 47, who gasped. Oh my God. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the white linen handkerchief my mother had given me on my wedding day. I pressed it to my bleeding lip. I looked at the bright red blood on the white fabric. I looked at Grant. His chest was heaving. He looked terrified of what he had just done. I turned around and walked out of the ballroom. As I pushed through the double doors, I heard Judith's voice echo over the mic. "Let her go. She'll come crawling back." They always do. I walked out into the cool May night. The parking lot was empty, save for the valets. I sat in my Honda Civic, locked the doors, and pulled out my phone. I dialed the only number that mattered. 2 rings. "Mom, please come." I had never used that tone with her in my entire life. "Where are you?" Her voice was instant ice. The country club. In the parking lot, Grant hit me. I heard her take one deep breath. I will be there in 40 minutes. Do not wash your face. Do not change your clothes. Do not wipe the blood. Lock the doors. I love you. I sat in the dark for 40 minutes. Inside, the gala continued. I found out later that after I left, Mrs. Aldridge marched up to Grant, told him he was a coward, and then quietly went to the lobby and called the police. Several guests discreetly left their $200 plates and walked out the back doors. Exactly 40 minutes later, a dark sedan aggressively pulled up next to my car. My mother stepped out. She was wearing a house coat and flat shoes. She had driven straight from her living room. She tapped on my window. I unlocked the door. She opened it, crouched down, and gently cupped my face. She looked at the bruising swelling under my eye and the dried blood on my chin. Okay, she said, her voice dropping into her professional courtroom register. Here is the plan. First, I take a photo for time-stamped evidence. Second, we walk back inside to get his full legal name, the address, and the witnesses. Third, we go to the precinct to file criminal charges. Mom, I don't want to go back in there, I whispered. She held out her hand. You will not be alone this time. I took her hand. We walked back into the building. As we passed the lobby, the LED donation board was still glowing, $280. Ling, ling, ling. We pushed open the ballroom doors. The band was playing a jazz cover. People were drinking, but as we walked down the center aisle, the music died, table by table. The room fell dead silent. Judith saw us. She practically marched off the stage. If you've come back to apologize, Myra, do it in private. You've ruined enough tonight. My mother didn't yell. She spoke with the chilling, practiced calm of a woman who had spent 20 years in a courtroom. Mrs. Kesler. My name is Elena Novak. I am here because your son struck my daughter in this room, in front of these people, 40 minutes ago. That is a private family matter, Judith hissed, glancing nervously at the VIP tables. Battery is not a family matter. Mrs. Kesler, my mother replied, her voice echoing perfectly. It is a criminal matter. Quick pause. Guys, if you know someone who needs to hear that exact sentence right now, share this video with them. Abuse thrives in silence. Let's break it. Grant tried to play peacekeeper. He stepped forward, his hands raised. Myra, please, let's just go home. She will not be going home with you. My mother said. Judith tried to spin the narrative again. She started fake crying. Look at them. Look at these women attacking our family. Grant's father would be ashamed of this. That was it. That was my opening. I looked at Judith and said, loud enough for the first 10 tables to hear. Harold's letter says differently. All the blood drained from Judith's face. She looked like she had seen a ghost. What letter? The one hidden in Grant's desk. I said, the one Harold wrote before he died. The one where he said his biggest regret in life was not standing up to your cruelty and begging Grant not to make the same mistake. The silence in that room was absolute. You could hear the ice melting in the glasses. Grant stared at me, his mouth open, realizing his father's final warning was now public knowledge. Judith panicked. That is private property. You are a vindictive, ungrateful little immigrant's daughter who, Judith, I interrupted, my voice sharp. You should also know that I've been reviewing the foundation's financial records. The database shows you brought in $340. 000 this year. The board in your lobby shows $280. Ling, ling, ling. I have fully documented the discrepancy, including your payments to 2 fake shell companies. Paige, who was standing behind her mother holding a clipboard, dropped it. It clattered loudly onto the hardwood floor. Judith completely lost her mind. 21 years of pristine, calculated control dissolved in 5 seconds. She started screaming, pointing her finger at my mother. You raised a snake. She is destroying everything Harold built. She is ruining us. My mother just stared at her. Your son hit my daughter. That is the only thing that happened tonight. Everything else is a conversation for your lawyers. Just then, the ballroom doors swung open. Officer Dan Morales, alongside an off-duty sergeant who had been attending the event, walked in. Mrs. Aldridge stood up from the lobby and pointed right at Grant. I saw everything. Officer, I have a full statement ready. Officer Morales walked straight up to Grant. Sir, did you strike this woman? Grant looked at Judith. He looked at the crowd. 3 people had their phones out recording. He had nowhere to hide. Yes. He mumbled, turn around and place your hands behind your back. The metallic click of the handcuffs was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. As they walked my husband in handcuffs past the stage, past the VIP tables, and out the front doors, I looked at Judith. For a split second, the rage was gone. And I saw pure, unadulterated terror. The ATM was closed. The facade was broken. My mother and I walked out of the country club, past the donation board, past the whispering guests, and drove to the police station. The fallout was swift and absolute. Grant was charged with first-degree misdemeanor domestic battery, facing 600 witnesses and video evidence. His lawyer forced him to take a plea deal, probation, mandatory anger management, and a permanent restraining order. My divorce was finalized in record time. I didn't ask for a dime of Harold's trust fund. I just wanted my name off the mortgage and my freedom. As for Judith, I submitted my compliance report to the state attorney general's office. It wasn't revenge. It was a legal obligation. The state opened an immediate investigation into the charity. Judith wasn't thrown in prison, but she was permanently stripped of her position. The foundation was taken over by an independent board. Paige lost her cushy event planning job and had to go work entry level at a local firm. The Kesler social empire crumbled overnight. 3 months later, I moved back to Akron. I got a massive promotion as a compliance director at a different healthcare network. I have my own apartment with my own name on the lease. On Sundays, I go to my mother's house. We eat sarmale, drink coffee, and enjoy the peace of a house where no one is manipulating the narrative. I want to leave you with this lesson. For years, I thought endurance was the same thing as strength. I thought that if I just absorbed Judith's cruelty, if I just kept compromising and biting my tongue, it would eventually prove my worth. I thought suffering quietly made me noble. It doesn't. Endurance is not dignity. Dignity is knowing exactly what your boundaries are. Dignity is knowing when to stand up, when to speak the truth, and when to walk out the door and let the garbage take itself out. You cannot love someone into treating you with respect. If they want to cast you as the villain in their story, let them, but make sure you write the ending. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you found any value in this, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what was the moment you finally realized you had to walk away from a toxic situation. Stay strong. Trust your data, and I'll see you in the next video.